let's just set the scene first. So, and it has actually been set quite well, I think, yesterday. I'm sure you had that cleverly planned.
Absolutely.
We heard from the panel session, particularly yesterday, that the way this government is going to operate and is operating, and we heard from the minister actually as well, is that they will not be interventionist, right? Which is really no surprise. And therefore, they're looking at the industry, as they call it, very broadly defined, to come to the party, work with them, or work with itself, I suppose I should say, and then have an aligned view and work with the government to try to make that happen. So I think that, that context is actually very positive. It certainly, in my mind, or in the board's mind, leaves a very good space for this association to operate and to take a leading role in helping to get that message aligned and put in some concrete steps towards achieving the strategy and the vision. So with that, can we just put the slide on? Yeah, so vision, you can read it yourselves, but,
Excellent.
maybe you can't. Okay. Here's those glasses. Well, I'll read it for you then. So it says, a sustainable net zero emissions New Zealand where Kiwi households and businesses can enjoy gas as a reliable, affordable energy source. We debated long and hard at the board about the wording and chopped and changed, but we feel this captures it quite well. It doesn't have any date on it. Visions don't normally have any date on them. I'm really pleased about that because it, the year 2050 gets tossed around quite a lot, as I was saying yesterday. I think there's, a far better, longer term future for products. So if you look at the next heading there, we're the voice of gas, and that's what I was alluding to in terms of the association taking a leadership role. I think we very clearly want to position ourselves as the place people looked to understand the current state of the industry, but also the future steps the industry is proposing to take. Left-hand side there, it talks about inspiring and educating Kiwi households and businesses about a safe, sustainable, net zero emissions future for gas energy in New Zealand. And, we were discussing, in fact, Daryl was saying to me last night at the dinner, or before the dinner, that, in his wide social circle, he goes to many, many events because he's so popular. And people say, Daryl, what do you do? And he says, well, I run a gas tanker company, amongst other things. And they say, well, what are you going to do next week? Because there's this pervading view, I think, out there, triggered by perhaps a report in 2019 that came out from the Climate Change Commission that, gas is a goner. And I think that's still, out there in the wider public a little bit. So, along those lines, we see it's our responsibility and a key activity that we can undertake to make sure everybody understands that gas has a long-term sustainable future in whatever form it may take. But also, of course, corporates and government and all other stakeholders. Middle section says, shape policy and action to ensure gas is recognised as critical in New Zealand, both today and for the future. Well, critical today, I think we heard a lot about that yesterday, and we as a board wanted to reflect that more immediate term issue in this strategy as well, because I believe that criticality isn't just short term, it's going to be a long term situation for us. So working with MB and others who do shape policy, and the ministers themselves, to make sure that gas gets its place, rightful place in any energy strategy. And it'll be interesting. It's interesting to hear Paul say they may well actually publish something, a short version later this year.
Kind of one-pager.
A one-pager, like this. Well, not as good as this, probably. He's not in the room, is he? No. And then the C words come out. They're longer than 4 letters. catalyse collaboration between industry, innovators and policymakers to make that future a reality. And we were hearing yesterday, I think, Ben was talking about the agriculture sector and waste sector, who are not traditionally part of what we would call the industry. And there are others as well who've been on the fringes, if you like, if you want to call it that. But they are going to we're going to have to embrace them if we're going to deliver this strategy and this roadmap. So this is what I was chatting about with Andy after the panel session. He was saying to me that he sees that apart from ERA, who, in his words, this is not mine, tend to shout at government, Energy Resources Aotearoa, by the way, I mean by ERA, who tend to shout at government or have had a history of doing so. The rest of the industry hasn't really had a coordinated, aligned voice, and that's where he sees our opportunity, and I would agree with that. So, yes, I mean, in a nutshell, I think that covers the bigger picture, if you like, of the strategy, and then I think Jeffrey's going to talk to us about the next stage.
Move down from the chair's rarefied air. Now, I actually did think ahead, and I thought, well, you probably can't read that. So there you go. So underneath those higher level, we've set 4 strategic objectives, which we think kind of flow in a logical sequence. To grow new GasNZ as the voice of gas, to carry out those functions that Nick was talking about, leading sector collaboration, thinking and advocacy. Second, and quite specifically, to develop what we're calling a gas roadmap, although it could have any other name, towards net zero emissions for 2050, so that we can establish primarily a clear focus for the industry as a whole, and specifically for GasNZ, what is it that we are going to advocate for and help make happen for the industry. And then, because we're a member organisation, to grow member satisfaction, make sure we are delivering what you need us to deliver for your businesses. And then fourthly, to inspire and educate the Kiwis about gas and gas's role in the transition to net zero 2050. So to dig into each of those in a little more detail, one of the things we did want to clarify was that when we're talking about gas, we are not just talking about natural gas, which has been kind of a pattern that people have fallen into in the past. We're talking about gas fuel in all of its common forms, so natural gas, LPG, and all of the renewable energy gases that are here and that are coming. So we consider those as within the scope of our organisation. As far as growing GasNZ as the voice of gas, there's a huge depth of knowledge and experience and networks within the industry, and we see our role is to leverage that, build new connections, new collaborations, perhaps extend where we've worked in the past to some of the sectors that we haven't really worked with, but we're going to need within the future. So build better links with the agricultural sector, with waste sector, with the water management sector, because we're going to need them as we particularly move into renewable gases. Build better links with politicians, both national and local politicians, and then build communities of interest so that we are working with the people that we need to be influencing as we move forward. We also want to provide thought leadership to the industry, so we're going to build our internal capability to conduct energy analysis and comment on the sector challenges and the opportunities, and work to implement those things that we're working through. And importantly, we want to be seen and trusted as a reliable source of information about gas and gas's role over the coming decades. And to do that, we need to be evidence-based with robust, reliable evidence that we're transparent about. I think if we can work on all those things, we will be seen as the voice of gas and be able to articulate what is the role of gas in New Zealand as we move towards net zero 2050, and how will things change, and how is that good for the community. So secondly, and more specifically, we're going to develop a gas roadmap to net zero emissions by 2050. Now, we had kind of expected that there would be a gas transition plan under the previous government. We had expected there would be an energy strategy, and neither of those things have quite come to pass yet. So we are looking to distill a gas roadmap for the industry that we as a whole can work together on. we don't want to reinvent the wheel. There have been at least a dozen really sound pieces of analysis and modelling of what are the challenges, what are the potential pathways and scenarios from here over the coming, many decades. We are not going to redo that work. We need to take that work and identify, well, how can we as your organization make a difference? How can we identify what are the changes in particular over the coming, let's say, 5 years, where we need action now to expand the range of options for energy gas in New Zealand over the coming decades. So I think that's where we're going to focus. So we're going to start on that piece of work now, and we're going to involve lots of you in that piece of work as well, because you have the expertise and the experience, and many of the people who've been presenting yesterday and today really have the skills and knowledge of what are the barriers that we need to address now so that we increase the range of options for gas going forward. And then, of course, we'll put in place an action plan of how can we then implement that and work with you to make that happen. The third of those strategic objectives is to grow member satisfaction. We need to identify and prioritize what it is that you want us to do as your member association. We're planning on developing a member program over the next couple of years. We have 5 committees within GasNZ, and it's possible we'll expand that, but they do great work in technical work, in standards, in health and safety, and in training work. So we'll be growing those and trying to take the work they're doing and make sure it's coming out to the industry more clearly. And we'll be conducting a member survey over coming months. So when you see that in your inbox, please don't delete it. Please have a look at it. We want to know what you think about the organisation and what we can do for you. And then we have to inspire and educate Kiwi households and businesses about the future of gas energy in New Zealand. And that's about growing social license, understanding the public views about gas energy, monitoring how those are changing over time, and then providing robust, reliable information about those views and about what the future of gas energy is in New Zealand. That needs to be robust because we need to be able to be very transparent about what we know and what we don't know, and defend our positions with evidence. If we don't do that, nobody's going to trust us. If they don't trust us, then gas will have an uncertain future. And of course, part of that, we need to make sure people understand that the energy trilemma has 3 legs, and all 3 of those legs need to be balanced together.
Yep.
So that, in a nutshell, is our strategy and our strategic objectives.
Can I just chip in again, unrehearsed? And that was really, a good summary. I think one of the things we talked about at the board the other day is that we've probably got a bit of a tailwind at the moment with the current government. Hearing what the minister was saying and Shane Jones as well. If you listen to his messaging, great. So let's take that opportunity, work with them, get that message aligned. But something could change, right? And it could, in theory, change in 2 years' time, for all we know. Roughly 2 years, isn't it?
Yep.
And Jeffrey made the point quite rightly that as an industry, apart from just getting our messaging right and putting that out there for all the stakeholders, we actually need to show some concrete progress.
Yeah.
Tailwind or headwind, if I put it that way. Whoever's in the beehive shouldn't matter. The fact is that it's the right thing to do for the industry and for New Zealanders. So it's incumbent upon us to actually deliver some stuff over the next, say, 3 to 5 years. The good news is, based on yesterday's conversations, that we've got Ecogas, starting up very, very soon. That's concrete. That's fantastic. And we've got James with his unknown pipeline of, opportunities. Ben, yeah.
Can I just ask a question? And sorry, my background is in the agri group, just for those who don't know, but how aligned is this to the COP28 Accord and the IR6 split with the life cycle analysis now that methane's been split into biogenic and petroleum? And, these are the parts we've got the 5th of December for the Agri-Zero conference, that you guys are contributing to as a sector, but you've got no speaking rights in it, in Wellington. And I've got a real question. When MBI identified 60% of our energy growth is within the agricultural sector, but we lack the representation in a
Yeah.
strong dairying sector here.
Yeah.
And my challenge to you is, I've seen the same strategy written for Agri Zero. The government are investing millions, 50 millions in this budget to do that. It's got you identified, but I haven't seen you at the table. So,
That's a question. Yeah. Well, I mean, it sort of underlines the fact that we haven't had a voice of gas, right? And I don't mean any offence to previous, people in this association. I think it is a miss. It's a gap, and we'll have to close it pretty quickly. I don't.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're talking, and particularly in that collaboration space, we're talking about building communities of interest. And one of the key things we do need to do is really build those links with the other people who are saying, they're saying they're working with us, and we're saying we're working with them. We actually need to do that. And one of the ideas we were talking about at the board meeting yesterday, day before, was really perhaps a CEO's forum of those various organizations. So at the very highest level, they're all getting together. So, but we can talk about that more next week.
Forums.
I mean, we spent a lot of work to do that life cycle IR6 analysis. And then the gas, it's a huge benefit to your net zero calculator. So I'm just telling you.
I don't see it as a challenge. I think it's quite supportive. But thanks. Take care.